In this episode of Project Car Haven, I distract myself from the main task, but eventually put plans into motion for stopping the motion of the car. Washer bottle has no lid, has a hole in it, it's old and brittle, so that's another thing that needs to go. Well, just below the washer bottle it appears there was an inlet and outlet for an air conditioner. It had these in place, so I need to get some grommets to blank those holes off because this car doesn't have AC at all. So another thing to take care of, this fuse panel just hanging down needs to be bolted back in place where it belongs. Okay, I'm not sure what this is for, but we'll figure it out. I just plugged the blower fan back in. Hopefully it still works. Give it some power. Ooh, I was afraid that'd happen. All right, bit of clean as you go. Let's see if we can get some more to come out. Gross. Well. So I cleared out the fan with the air compressor, take the vent off to be able to get the leaves out. I noticed it was held in with some wood screws, which aren't correct. So I dug around in my collection of bolts, fasteners, screws that I've hauled all around the country, and I found these little thumb screws which happen to fit that perfectly. I don't know how many years I've held onto those for. I don't know what they originally came from, but I guess they're going back into service to be able to hold this on and be able to easily loosen it to adjust it up and down and tighten it back in place again. Put that back where it needs to be-ish. Parts from Thailand arrived. So this is a rubber boot that goes over where the shifter goes into the transmission. So it stops all dirt and dust getting in there. It's going to be a bit of a stretch getting this over the gear stick, but try it and see what happens. Yeah, not too bad. With a bit of muscling and effort, I think I'll be able to get that on there. So just fit the gear knob back in place. I'll need to get another inner rubber boot and the outer decorative leather shifter gaiter at some other time. But for now, this is good. Now I think I'll probably start with the rear brakes. First step, I'm going to need to paint these rotors because they are nice and bright and shiny, will probably get quite rusty, and I don't want them to stand out from behind the wheel. So I'm going to have to mask up these holes, give it a good clean, and then paint them black. I'm going to take them out of here so I don't contaminate the painting space with the brake cleaner. Just need to mask up over the holes so the paint doesn't get onto the braking surface on the inside of the drum, and then give them a couple of coats of paint. While I'm waiting for the paint to dry on those drums, I'm going to pull the carb off. You're probably wondering why. When I assembled it, I put the gaskets in place, but I'm going to use some of this Permatex Aviation former gasket sealant just to make sure the seal is 100% good. Yep, the ever common 11mm. Now this stuff doesn't cure completely. It sort of stays tacky, but it doesn't shift, and it's resistant to fuel. Is the perfect sealant for gaskets for a carb. Well, I am kind of jumping all over the place today. I do want to do the rear brakes, but we all know that the master's actually dead, so I've got a replacement with a difference. Remove the bracket for that reservoir because this master comes from a Toyota Tercel. The reservoir is built into the master, has the same bore diameter. The Tercels also run rear drum brakes, so the drum bias should be correct. The spacing for the mount is the same. This is a direct bolt in for a TA22 Celica and removes the need to run a remote reservoir. Vac line for the booster out of the way. There we go. These lines will require some adjustment. By adjustment, I mean bending and hopefully not kinking. Just need them out of the way for the time being. Just making sure that rod actually moves. It does feel a bit crusty. Let's give that a bit of a clean while we're at it. I'm actually a bit tempted to give that a bit of a rebuild. Why did I bother hanging on to that? Way too much. Perfect. That's pretty much brand new, really. Well, ideally I'd like to have bench bled this, but I don't have any feed nipples to be able to cycle it, so I'm just going to push all the air through all the lines and do it the hard way. That's nice. That was a flared nut and this one's not, so I think I'm going to go look for another one. It looks like the nut collection strikes again. Found 2 flange nuts to use for this, so I'll take this other one off and have a matching pair. Some nice new zinc coated hardware. So to replace the washer bottle, I'm just going to put in a generic one, which I picked up from Super Cheap Auto. I'll need to fix a bracket to the bracket because that's too thick, it won't hold the bottle. Just go from there. First step, drill a hole. Quick test fit, happy enough with that. Well, this washer nozzle's broken anyway. Hose is still flexible but kind of old, so I think I'll just get rid of it and use what came with the kit. So after messing around with the hose length a little bit and the nozzle direction, I think I have this set up and working the way it needs to. So the paint is now dry on these brand new drums. So it's time to start pulling all the brakes apart, replace the shoes, replace all the springs and other related hardware, replace the slave cylinders, and axle seals, maybe the bearings if they require it, and the often forgotten about rear brake hose. So working on refurbing these drum brakes, I have to get the axles out to replace the axle seal because it's probably 60 years old and leaky. First step, get the drum off. I'll go for shoe retainers. That boy seemed really stuck. Oh, I hope that pin didn't break. Nope, we're good. Already loosened. Use a 10mm to get this off. Very good. Right, well, the slave cylinder will come free once I get the springs off and the shoes start coming out. Try and work on this return spring next. Pretty much just falls apart, I guess. Get this guy out of the way. The shoes. And get the park brake off. The self-adjuster. The self-adjusting mechanism. There's also a spring for that. Self-adjuster. That's one off. I'll do the other one later. Shoe out the way. 1, 2, 3 springs. Turn. Now this needs to be cleaned up and greased. This needs to be cleaned up. Now we got to get this guy off. Next step, there's 4 nuts holding on the retaining plate here. So I'll try and crack them loose with this. There we go. Oh, don't you hate it when your nuts get stuck? Next, I'll use the old drum as a slide hammer. Fit it backwards. A couple of wheel nuts. Give each of them a few turns. Okay, so that bearing's actually really good. So now I just need to get this backing plate off and get it into this degreaser to clean it up, give it a coat of paint, put it back on, and we'll start going back together once I replace that axle seal. that plate needs to be cleaned up. That goes in here. Let's use this brush, get the degreaser all over and start working this. Just going to leave that to soak for a while and move on to a couple of other jobs. Alright, so there's some old gasket left behind. It's a bit of brake cleaner, help clean out all the gunk and help soften up that gasket. Trusty razor blade and just start shaving away. There we go. Give that a bit of a wipe out. Nice clean surface for it. New seal to sit in. New seal. Bit of Diff oil on the outside and inside edge of the seal. Make sure it goes in the right way. Line it up centrally-ish. Ring of the old seal, front of the new one, so as not to damage the new one. Attempt to move things out of the way. Start tapping. When refitting the axle, it'll push the seal in the rest of the way from there. Back onto cleaning up the backing plate. Also need to clean the auto adjuster and re-grease that with some copper grease and clean up the auto adjusting bracket, which will also get new pins and some grease on the pivot point. Pull the body apart, clean out the threads, and grease all of this up again. As you can see, all the filth is coming off the backing plate pretty well. So I got some copper grease, put a bit on the thread of the adjuster. That's way too much. Perfect. Parts are nice and dry. Thread this back in. Make sure there's a good coating of that copper grease on the interior threads. I'll wind it all the way back out to check. It's moving much smoother. I'll put a bit in there for luck. Someone here. Give that a good slide. Alright. Put that aside for later. The paint for the backing plate's all dry. Now I need to just remove the paint off the mating surfaces to the shoes, to put some copper grease on there so they can move freely when the brakes operate. So I don't have replacement paper gaskets for the mating face to the axle and the backing plate, but I do have this non-curing sealant which I'll put in place, which should work just as effectively. Refitting the axle, making sure to try and not drag it upon the brand new seal we just put in. Now the fun part starts, trying to get the brake shoes back in. So a bit of copper grease on these contact surfaces. Park brake and adjuster return. Spring already fitted to that shoe. Next I get the slave cylinder fitted. You sit on there. It's one retaining pin in. Pushing the pliers, grab the pin, give it a turn. All right, now we're getting somewhere. All right, that's going to sit in place for now. That can be adjusted once the drum's back on. This is the fun spring, and by fun spring I mean not fun at all. All right, that side's on. Now I need to get this over here. Attempt one of probably 50. So I got it on the first shot. Look, that never happens. Never. That's all done. Now it's just a matter of getting that handbrake cable on here. That will be tricky, surely. That went a lot easier than expected. Now it's a matter of refitting this drum and then setting the adjuster so the brakes just barely drag, and back it off a little bit, and then test the handbrake. That already needs to be adjusted in, it's out too far. No drag at all. Should be able to crank the handbrake and make it adjust. We'll see if that works. Handbrake on. Oh, that is solid. Handbrake off. Very free. Well, that's 6 clicks on the handbrake. The manual says 3 to 7. That is pretty solid on 6, and it's free with the handbrake off. So that is done. Now I'm just going to paint this center here, put some tape over this so it's nice and smooth so the drum can move freely. Something of note, need the handbrake off when fitting the wheels, because if you put the handbrake on and the drum's sitting out a bit, the wheel and drum won't be on all the way, because you won't be able to force that drum further onto the brake. So you need the handbrake off so everything can be tightened down to the hub firmly, and that will make it safe. Well, that's the axle seals and rear brakes done. I thought I'd take this opportunity to pause for a second and ask for your feedback. Is that too much detail? Is it boring? Would you prefer me to race through stuff, skip through it, make it quicker? Is it not enough detail? Am I missing stuff? Let me know in the comments below whether I'm on the right track or I need to change what I'm doing. Driveline wise, the rear's nearly complete. Need to throw on a brake line, drain the diff oil and change that. While I'm doing that, may as well replace the seal on the diff. While the prop shaft's out, may as well replace the seal on the rear of the gearbox, because I definitely know that's leaking. So right around where the rear of the gearbox is, there's a pool of oil, so that seal's definitely gone. Might as well sort that out while we're doing everything else. Rear brake line here is very crusty. It runs from here to the axle. Let's take this guy out and replace. So yes, this brake line has seen better days. Feed this guy in. Make sure not to cross thread it, that'd be handy. That's pretty tight. That's in nice. Tighten this line up. That's in solid, solid, solid. Let's hope that when it comes time to fill it with fluid and bleed the brakes, that this doesn't leak. Alright, so I want to change the diff oil. It needs to be drained anyway, so I can put in the diff pinion seal. the drive shaft or prop shaft needs to come out, so the leaking gearbox output shaft seal can be also replaced at the same time. First step, get the fill plug off of the diff before removing the drain. Reason being, if you take out the drain and you can't get the fill plug out, how are you going to refill the diff? It's not easy. Save yourself some hassle. The fill plug is a 24mm. Oh, and that came out not too terribly. That's good. I doubt this will leak. And the drain is also 24mm. Oh, that was crunchy. It'd be really nice to not get diff oil all over my hands because it is the second most stinkiest thing on planet Earth. Well, that's actually really clean. Maybe someone changed this recently-ish. Also, there's a bit of filth on the drain plug. It's magnetic, it should be, but there's no big chunks, so that is good. Just leave that to drain. So it's held on by 4 12mm. So the prop shaft's off. Now it's just a matter of removing that pinion flange so I can get to the seal. Now, I did put some diff oil on the outside edge of that seal before putting it in. I put some diff oil onto this here. There's a little punched in mark on the nut. There's a notch in the thread here. Let's get them to line up. Punch that back in. Well, that's probably enough for one day. So I'm just going to leave it here now. In the next episode, hopefully, some springs for the front will have arrived and I can work on the front suspension. And I tie up everything else that's going on back here. See you in the next one.